you said now you're even preparing for your set. Like I always thought with songwriters, it's like my friends have to take a year or two off so they can go live a life. I mean, I have a friend who always gets back with his ex because he knows it's a toxic relationship because needs songwriting material later. But for you, like what is the process of honing your skill set as far as having fresh material for a comedian, which I know like especially when all of you are choosing from the same subjects, like your take on where we are now, like what's that whole creative process like?
Well, I think, for me personally, like I've made a living on by being myself. I've made a living off of my personality, which is not something as a little kid I even knew I could do. I didn't even know that was possible. When you do stand up, you're writing your own script. I mean, some people may have writers, but still, these are like whether it's me writing books, whether it's me doing my podcast, Dear Chelsea, or whether it's me doing stand up, these are all self-generative, right? I'm all like they're all coming from me. And I think that like I work really hard when I work, and then I, don't work really hard when I don't work. I go and vacation really hard, and I experience really hard because I want to have experiences to talk about. Like you have to live a life to gain the material to write books. You have to live a life to gain the material to write a set. I like last year I put out my most recent special on Netflix, and that means you start over, that you have to have a whole new hour of material. So then you go into your life and you're like, what haven't I talked about yet? What's happened in the last year? Just like I was telling you about my family and my family vacations, like that's a topic in my stand up. Like I started editing people in my family. I'm like, listen, I didn't marry your wife. I'm not required to go. I've extended my generosity for 25 years. I want to go on vacation with your kids. Bring me your kids, but you guys stay back. Or I want to go on vacation with my siblings and none of their spouses. Like I'm actually setting a set of rules now because I just don't feel like doing that anymore. Like I'm a woman. I pay for almost everything that my family does together, and now I'm making the rules to fit what I desire, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I have a question. Okay, so maybe a decade and a half ago, um, I was in the beginning process of maybe will they or won't they dating a comedian. And someone put something in my ear and I couldn't get rid of it, which is basically they were like, yo, you better not never mess up or part of her you'll be part of her set.
Right.
And I almost think that I subconsciously sabotaged the relationship so I could get out of it. Do you do you find it hard to sort of draw in people? And I don't mean like your comedy circle or whoever your creative circle is, but do they often have is that apprehension or are they slow to come into your sphere for fear that they might be the subject of your life, which is the stage?
I'm sure that that is something that lots of men think about. If there's ever a chance of that connecting with them, I'm sure many men are like, "Oh God, I've spoken publicly about almost every relationship I've had. Not everyone, because some people who are private, like if you're not a public figure, I try to leave you out of it because it's not fair. But
Right.
if like I dated Joe Coy, who's also a comedian. So I've spoken about that publicly, very limited. Nobody really knows why we broke up, but we were a very public relationship, so we publicly broke up. But I didn't drag him. I would have done that probably 10 years ago, but now I'm a little bit more mature. So I try not to humiliate men because I know, my feeling is a lot of men are already turned off by me and my bold personality and the fact that I'm confident. That turns a lot of men off, sadly, instead of men going, oh my God, that's a woman who knows what she wants and is confident.
Yeah, I often say that, like, we'll say, like, yeah, I want a strong will, da 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 da, da. But then that's never in almost every situation, the person that tells me that will have some sort of buyer's remorse later. And I'm like, well, you got to be honest with what you really want in a relationship because
Yeah, it looks good. Like what
on
you
paper, yeah.
right. What you think you may want, you may not want when it's put to the test and it's real. Like, I'm an independent person. I don't really need a lot from a guy. You actually have to be a great guy and we have to have great chemistry for you to be in my life. I'm not like my standards are so high because I really don't want to settle or have to for anything less. And, that's not a threat. That's just my truth. Like I've been through gross guys and idiots. Like I'm not doing that again. I'm too secure and I'm totally fine also being single. Like I'm not one of those women who's on dating apps every night going, "Oh, I got to hook up, I got to find somebody, I got to go on dates." I don't operate like that.